Hello, hello, hello. This is me shaking my, I was going to say marimbas, but I think marimba is a giant xylophone, maybe. my maracas. Yes, that's. Listen, you can't see her, but she's mouthing to me backstage, so we're just going to bring her up here.
Maracas.
Maracas.
Hi, everyone.
That's Emily Arnold. Emily Arnold.
That's Shannon Stott.
And this is Improv on and off the topic. Woo!
Where we talk about topics that we have and how they're relevant to your lives on and off the stage, improv-wise.
Yeah, it's true. This is what we do. And it's really fun and it's really great because this year the topic is community. And this month the topic is
curiosity.
You know, I hadn't put those two C's together. I can't. You know, the last time we did this, it was all T. And now it's all C.
We're all about letters. So what we're telling you is we're the Sesame Street of your adulthood.
Hey, thank you.
This
You're
month
welcome.
Brought to you by the letter C, as in curiosity and community.
And yeah, we're talking a lot about it because it's improv. We're both improvisers. We're both professional improvisers. Emily is also a licensed behavioral analyst, board certified, thank you, behavioral analyst. And so whereas as we're both talking about the improv and the curiosity, the theme and whatnot, we're also talking about the science behind and the brain science and the behavioral science that goes behind. I see Charlotte says, hi, Charlotte. It's lovely to see you. We love to have you. And so today we've been talking about curiosity. We've been talking about curiosity in a whole myriad of different ways. Go to YouTube and look up all of the shows. But today we're going to talk about curiosity in this way. And that is because I'm curious about it. Oh, Emily, about being curious about something that you are afraid of and not either choosing not to follow, like not to dig, or choosing to dig. I've been thinking about that. Well, specifically, I've been thinking about it because I've been around my family, and my sister am I allowed to say she just got married?
I'm sure that's not a secret.
I'm sure
that's not a secret. I'm sure she's not like.
So, right, she got married. And so family has been around. So we've been, talking, and not that I have dug into any family secrets, but I definitely have been thinking about, wow, there is so much that whether it's family, whether it's about family, whether it's about ourselves, whether it's about our friends, whether it's about the like just ethos, the world around us, government wise and things like that. There are so many things that are scary sort of to know. And we sort of just turn away from them. Mm-hmm. So, and what that means for obviously off the stage, but what is the equivalent on stage of turning away from something that you're like, I am sort of curious about that, but I would rather not know. And then what are all the things in between, meanings and whatnot. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah. And I think there's, one of my favorite quotes is Patton Oswalt quote that's just like, the world is chaos, be kind, which is kind of the mantra I frequently live by, because there is so much pain and chaos. And Charlotte in the chat has disclosed that she's going through some painful times right now. And I completely understand, Charlotte. I have been there as well. I have lost friends and loved ones, and it is painful. And there is this urge and kind of like the societal, I think, pressure to be like, just move on, it's okay. And I think that's pretty human for us to want to avoid diving into those feelings and exploring like how we feel that way and like what triggers that sort of emotion and what comforts us. Um, and I think it's very human societal for us to just be like, no, it's fine. I'll just pretend like it's okay and I'll just go over here. But by avoiding our feelings and our curiosity about those things, I think we miss out on a lot of a lot of life, and I think we start to deny that life is chaotic. And I think it's helpful for us to remember that it's okay to um, examine how we're feeling and look at the crap because
Yeah.
our crap is there. It's not going away.
And it's enmeshed, right? Like the crap the crap is enmeshed with the non-crap, right?
Mhm.
Like it is so interesting. I want to go back to what you were talking about as far as the I'm fine, everything's fine. That part and the time we in this particular society, and I think, well, no, in this particular society, American society, there is a thought process that there is a time for grieving. There is a time you do something bad in quotes happens, undesirable, and then whatever it is that you're grieving about, you have a certain time to grieve it, and grieving looks like this. It looks a certain
Mhm.
way, right?
Mhm.
And so let us
Mhm.
put ourselves in these boxes uh, so that we can complete the grieving in a certain amount of time and look a certain way when we grieve, and then check that box. But
Then
the
move
thing,
on.
yeah, and move on. And oh, you know what? So I was listening to a podcast. This person was telling a story about the passing of his wife. And he was basically saying that he went on this as soon as she died, he started dating, he started like changing his hair, he was like all this stuff, he did all of these things. And he was expressing that in the moment, he didn't know he was grieving. But after finding a therapist and the therapist letting him know, hey, grieving looks very different. And we all go through different stages and in different ways. So to, to sort of navigate back to the curiosity part, I think there is something very beautiful about sitting with your feelings and being curious about what it is that you're doing. Because sometimes, so Charlotte's talking about crying, right? Uh, Even in that crying, and you said, Emily, we have to let that stuff out. The poop, the crap. And I was saying the crap is enmeshed with the good. Like the
Yeah.
crying can help us move through all of it, right? In those sad tears there might be happy tears and happy memories and there might be things that you forgot, things, there might be ways that you are need to grieve, move around, that aren't crying. But we don't, in exactly what you said, when we cut everything off, when we're just like, nope, we're just not going to do that, then we lose all of it,
Yeah.
all the good parts of life as well. It's really
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, part of, I think the reason we feel loss and pain is because of the joy, like losing that joy and connection, right? Um,
That's so good.
so we can't have one without
Without the
the
other.
other.
And on stage, that's so lovely, because on stage, when we're looking at, like, I'm curious about, I always bring up character because it's like the easiest for me, I think. But I'm curious about doing characters, but I'm afraid, so I'm not going to go down there. Uh,
Mm,
when when we do something like that, we cut off all of it, right? It looks like you're cutting off using your body, using your voice, using levels, using space, using connection to memories, like drawing on people for inspiration, losing inspiration. You lose all those things when you say, like, forget it, I'm not going to try a character. It's
Yeah.
not just the like it's not just the thought of what a character is. It's the practice of all those other things that we lose on when we're talking on stage.
Yeah, because I think, if we're talking on stage and talking to improvisers, I think we've all felt like that rush of like when we do dive in and try something new and explore, right? And if we spend our time avoiding things that might be difficult or scary for us or risky for us to explore, kind of like how societally it's risky for us to explore our emotions. If on stage we avoid what is risky to us, then we miss out on that. We might miss out on that feeling that we get where like we feel renewed, like we've created something or like done something special, right? Yeah, I know a lot of us, I know I've had like that kind of like dip where like you kind of like feel like you're in a rut and you're like, and like I'll do shows and I'll be like, okay, yep, that was another one, nothing special. And if we're avoiding taking risks and exploring the hard things, then we're gonna keep feeling that and then lose that love and that joy. That probably drove a lot of us to do that thing in the first place.
Yes. Charlotte also says, I sang for the first time in front of an audience for my second City Conservatory class, which is something I've been avoiding. And I had a ton of fun, and it was a great challenge.
Exactly.
Yay!
Yeah, exactly. Same, similar kind of thing, right? Like we avoided the, if you had never done that, if you had been like, no, never gonna sing, imagine the fun that you miss out on,
Yeah.
and the new confidence and skill and like part of yourself that you discovered that you miss out on.
On the other side of that, Emily, like there is I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes you are afraid of something, or you're curious about something, and you're like, I'm curious about what that's going to be like, but I have a feeling it's going to be terrible. And then you go through it, and it is terrible.
I am an anxious person. And so I am constantly like, what is the worst possible thing that can happen? And I will research all of those things, and they are all terrible. I try to justify that in my brain as like arming myself with the knowledge so that when the terrible thing happens, I'm not blindsided. But because the world is chaotic, it's always there's always something, right? But yeah, I think that's the risk that we take.
Yeah.
I think probably the most common example is like when you're dating, right?
Oh, that's great.
When you get out there and you start meeting people and you're like, this could end terribly. And you're right. It probably could end terribly. And I mean, to be honest, I guess if we're being for real, every relationship's gonna end somehow. Either by like you get really old together and hopefully you notebook it, or like you
Notebook it. Wow.
like
We're just like I love it.
I think it's like best case scenario for a relationship, right?
Yeah.
But like so, but truly, like when you're like it's gonna end at some point. And I think we kind of have to, similar to the grief thing, right? Know that either we take that risk and have that joy, knowing that there is the risk that we're going to lose it someday, or we miss out on it.
Yeah. There's also the idea of looking around the thing and looking at what you're aiming to learn, right? So even in dating or whatever it is, well, we can even go back to that character example, But the idea of like, oh, I'm curious about I'm curious about dating. Let's talk off the stage for a little bit. I'm curious about dating this person, and you know what? It's probably going to be terrible. Great. Sure. But let's, instead of thinking about the person or the character or the scene, the actual thing that you're focused on, what are you trying to learn, or what are you trying to gain through go through or by going through that experience, right? So
Mhm.
it may not always be that I'm trying to gain love. That's what I'm gaining. I'm gonna gain love. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be that you are trying to gain confidence, right? Or you're working on listening, or you're working on being empathetic,
Mhm.
or you want to be more vulnerable and open. You're learning to be vulnerable and open, and these types of ways to think about giving yourself, okay, if I can turn towards this thing, go through this date, maybe the date doesn't work out, the relationship doesn't work out, but what did you discover about yourself? Were you able to become more open, more empathetic, be a better listener, these types of things? And then on stage, I always say it, it's the same thing, right? On stage, it's the same thing. What are you aiming for? What are you curious about? You're curious about character, you're curious about scene painting, sure, but really, let's unpack that. What are you actually aiming for? What are you actually curious about? Are you curious about changing up how you do improv, like trying a different persona? Are you curious about something else that somebody else is doing, and you think that characters might be the way to go about it? Are you what is it? Being more confident, being a louder speaker, a better listener, all of those things, um, we can we can think about. I'm thinking about like family, and when, like, even going back to this grieving that Charlotte was talking about, wanting to sort of avoid the pain of grief. If we reframe that, and you want what can we gain out of moving through that
Mhm.
uncomfortable situation? Like,
Mhm.
can we gain, you said, the some memories? Can we gain some memories? Can we just gain being vulnerable, empathetic, listening to our bodies?
And being able to be there for other people when they're going through the same thing, right? Um, yeah, I lost someone close to me probably about 10 years ago, and then 3 years later, my best friend lost someone close to her, and I was able to be like, "Hey, girl," and like have the what I what she and I would talk about was enjoyable was that we would have the like conversations that polite society wouldn't want you to have about grieving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those of us who have lost people who were like, they weren't perfect.
Right.
And then we make like jokes that if we, made in front of other people, it would not be as
Other
good.
people wouldn't appreciate them, but
Understand.
you both did.
And there. And so like um being able to have that experience and pass that on and give that to someone else to make their experience a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Um because in any of these things, any of these hard things that we're looking for, I think it's good to know that you're not alone. You're not the only human in existence who has ever felt whatever the thing you're going through. I betcha someone else has gone through something similar.
Yeah. Yeah. That idea, the someone else has gone through something similar, preparing yourself almost to create community, which actually is our bigger thing.
How
is
funny.
how great, right? It's our bigger theme, right? Because that's true. That's what you're doing, as we are connecting curiosity in the way we're talking about it now to community going through being curious about things that are painful, moving towards and moving through that pain, and coming out on the other side helps you to connect with your community, because other people, exactly what you said, you're not alone. Other people are doing this.
No, and not to get too deep into how
No,
your
do
and
it.
my personal lives have been over the past week and a half, but we've had very similar weeks where we've both been traveling, and then we both had some health issues while we were traveling.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's the sort of thing where in the moment, like if we think too hard about it, we're like, our trips were ruined, and probably other people who are not in the situation were probably like, I'm so sorry, I feel bad for you. But because you and I have been in the similar situation, we can like laugh and joke about it. And we're like, oh, we took baths, and I'm like, I listened to murder podcast, and I learned all about Siegfried and Roy, and like we're able to kind of bond over something and help us get through and process something that is not a great happy memory for either of
Right.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. And improv helps with that. It teaches us in small micro doses. I guess small micro doses is redundant, but in small in small doses, right?
Micro.
Right, micro, small. That it's okay. It's to practice how to move through something scary, right? Just getting on stage and creating a scene, and getting on stage, creating a scene with other people. You have you're juggling all these different layers of storytelling is scary, And I think when people say things like, oh, I could never do that, right? You're so brave. I could never do improv, those types of things. It's the process of being curious about something scary and not going through it. But when you do go through it, right? As in when you do take an improv class and you do get on stage, you're practicing for the moments that we're talking about, right? You're practicing, man, what does it look like when you're in a scene to make any choice to keep the scene moving forward? You have to keep it going until that 3 minutes, and that 3 minutes can represent 3 years of grief, or 3 years of whatever it is that you're going through, of like fear or sadness or
Mm-hmm.
that you want to avoid, but you got to go through it, and it's helpful to have that practice. I think for you and me, this idea that all the stuff that we've been going through as far as health goes, leaning on the practice of improv, like, okay, this isn't going to be forever. We only have 3 minutes. Like,
We have a little bit of time. I just have a few things to binge listen to. By the way, Charlotte, I am a My Favorite Murder fan. I also love Criminal. And I listened to a full-on Siegfried and Roy podcast that was amazing. Listening to a John List podcast right now. It's a whole listen. I love. Speaking of examining like scary things, I maybe this is a good segue into the white woman phenomenon of true crime listening.
oh,
I know.
go on.
I honestly, because like it is a lot of like looking at some of that like dark and scary kind of like looking at the awful kind of crap. I get really curious about crime and things like that. And I think part of that does have to do with like exploring the world in a safe way, kind of like in improv, we explore the world in a safe way. When I'm listening to like these stories and I'm like, okay, so if I go camping, I need to bring other people, and I need to like have a phone with like a geotag, and like people need to know where I am. I need to check in every so often. Like it helps me like gain this knowledge, even though it's something that's hard and not fun to listen to, and it kind of calms me in the way that I talked earlier about how being anxious kind of calms me when I go through all my scenarios. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, like having a list of things, you're coping,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I lock my garage door when I come home.
Right. It's
Even
the
though it's an inside door and my husband makes fun of me, I'm like, listen, I watched an episode of Criminal Minds.
I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this
I'm doing
for
this for
us
you. So
to
we
keep us
so we
safe.
don't get murdered.
Like nobody wants to get murdered. No, my gosh, it's not a thing. But yeah, like that. When you have talked about your tool belt or toolkit, that's the equivalent of that,
Yeah.
right? When you give your students a toolkit and they know that in that toolkit they have a multitude of things that's in their backpack and in their pocket to arm themselves with when they get on stage, right? That
Mhm.
it helps us to know, like, okay, I can be curious about whatever it is that's going on. I've got all these things in my kit, and if I come up against something that I've never seen before, which you might because it's improv, you still have an idea of how to go through it because you've got your handy
Yeah, you
dandy.
got your tools. They're very similar tools that you've
Right.
used, and you're like, it's like if you're like, I've never built a bookshelf before, but I have built a regular shelf before.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
used a hammer.
It's interesting, Emily, because we really think it is easy to get wrapped up in what seems like something very new, right? When something is scary, when we're looking at, I'm going to jump into another sort, not metaphor, but like telling the truth, for instance. Like we've somehow lied about something or gotten caught, or we're trying to hide something, and if we are curious, if we're like, man, I am curious about what would happen if I told the truth. And there's like in your head, there's all these scenarios that feel new. Like, I'm going to get in trouble. This is going to happen to me. All these things are going to happen to me, and they're all new and they're all scary. But really, have you like told the truth before? Like, how did it turn out? Maybe it was scary, but the
Yeah.
thing is that it's not new, and you've got some things in your pocket to help you through those situations. Yeah, I don't know. Tell something about the thought of like telling the truth uh, is scary. Like feels
Right.
like
Being
curious.
honest, being
Yeah,
honest and open about like yourself, because there is, I think that has to do with everything we're talking about in terms of like, there's risk of people judging you for the truth or not liking, or you not liking, or they not liking your truth. Um, but when you're avoiding the truth, then you're just lying.
yeah, and you sometimes you're lying to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're lying to yourself. Oh, and all of these things are ways that when we are curious, it is us moving forward through a scene, right? When we are curious, it's us asking a question about the our surroundings, ourselves, and when we are brave enough to move through and answer that question, we get to move through and answer the question of a scene. What is the end of this story? And the thing is, it's the same thing off stage when we're brave enough to do that, when we're like, okay, I need to tell the truth or be honest or grieve or you can help yourself move through your life, whatever story you're in, chapter you're in the story of your life. You can move through that, and
And
curiosity
because,
helps with that.
and because you can move through that, you can then pay that forward and help your community members move on as well.
Absolutely.
And with
You're
that,
good. You're
we're at
good.
30 minutes.
You're good.
Baby.
Boom! Let's shake our maracas.
Way to go, Curiosity Maraca team.
Yes, Curiosity Maracas for the win. Friends and family, you know where you are. This is Shannon Stott and Emily Arnold Fleming. We've been talking about curiosity. If you want to know what we talked about, you should go and watch the show. We'll be back next Friday.
Really?
What are we? This is Monday.
We'll be back on Monday with a new monthly topic that we will remember before then.
And
we've decided it and we've written it down. It's just not in front of either of us.
No, it's not. But until next Monday, catch us on Wednesday because we have a show, a virtual show, and that's with everybody, our full cast, and that's going to be amazing. Otherwise, between now and then, we will see you on and
off of the stage.
Bye. Bye.